Welcome to the podcast, Beyond Expectations, Parenting Autism. Follow Michelle Chabolla's journey of raising a child with autism, the challenges, victories, and rewards. If you're a parent, caregiver, or simply someone seeking to understand autism on a personal level, you're in the right place.
All right, here we are, Beyond Expectations with Michelle Chabolla, Sean Dobson, and today our guest is Susanna Peace Lovell. Lovell, how do you say your last name? I didn't even ask.
Yes,
Know
yes,
that.
emphasis on the word love. Yes.
Love, there you go. And Susanna actually reached out to me, and I'm so happy. She has her own podcast, she writes her own books, and she's got a great story. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Okay, well, so good to see you, Michelle and Sean. And I'm all the way over here on the very west coast of the country in a little town called Los Angeles, California. And my story begins with, growing up in a big family and always wanting to be a mama. It was like the biggest, most clearest, crystal clear conviction I've ever had in my life, which is I am going to be a mother. However, that needs to happen, I'm going to be a mother.
Mhm.
And so I have been laser focused on that. Of course, not um, necessarily trying to be until it was the right time, but, just having this sense of just like a knowing deep within that I am meant to be a mother, in addition to a million other things, right? For sure, I'm meant to be a mother. That is my calling. It's going to happen. And so, I am a type of person who is very type A. I like to be a little bit controlling about how things are going to be and how they work. And before I became a mother, I felt like, I got this life. I know how to make things happen. I know that if I want to get into said university, I'm going to study really hard and get in. I know that if I want a particular job, I'm going to practice and interview and network and get that job. If I want a promotion, if I want to rate, whatever it is, I just feel I've always felt like, okay, I have so much agency, insert control over how my life is going to be. And, the first time that I had any inkling that that the world worked a little bit differently is when I became pregnant. Because now I'm pregnant. And by the way, my plan was working beautifully. Met somebody, we decided we were going to get married a couple years later. We have since divorced, but 3 months after we got married, I was pregnant. I was like, "See? I mean, this is how it works, people. Duh." And, and I was so excited until I just started throwing up every day, all day, and that, I was so sick, I was so nauseous, I just felt disgusting. I, ended up throwing up for, like, 7 months, and everyone was like, Are you so blissed out?" And I was like, "No," but also, yes, like, yes, I'm so excited. I'm going to be a mama. And at the same time, I was like, but this has nothing to do with me. Like, I can't control not feeling sick and icky and not gaining 55 pounds, whatever it was, right? I don't, it's not about me. And so that little thought started creeping into my brain while I was pregnant. And certainly when Arizona was born, a week past her due date, by the way, again, nothing to do with me. I'm like, can you get out? Get out. Um, and she was born and she just commanded a lot of attention right away. And she wasn't, diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, which ultimately happened when she was like 2.5, but she had crazy food allergies, she had asthma, she had so many things that required paying attention to. And she was very vocal in her crying and she was very uncomfortable. She
Mhm.
was she was miserable. She was reacting and responding to things that were not good for her body. And you can't have a conversation with a 2-month old about what's wrong. You know what I mean? Why are you crying? So it was just a lot of effort around doctor's appointments and lots of appointments. Um, around with professionals around, like, she was breaking out in eczema all over her body. She was crying all the time. And I was in and out of the pediatrician and the gastroenterologist and the dermatologist and, holistic doctors and all of the other fun things we have here, readily available in Los Angeles for the low, low price of, right? But I was so desperate, right? I just was like, I don't, this poor child is crying. And by the way, now I'm crying all day too, because I don't know how to help her and support her. And this is not what I expected
Mhm.
for new motherhood. Um, anyway, fast forward, she's now 20 years old. And along the way, turns out she had crazy severe allergies. Still does. That's a big part of our profile. Um, she was diagnosed officially with autism spectrum disorder, like I said, when she was about 2.5 years old. A couple years later, when they could officially test her for
Mhm.
ADHD, that came back. Yep. And then after that, it's just been this sort of ongoing journey and relationship with anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, and really perseverating around things that don't seem so important or dramatic to us, but for her could be, just, let her go off into a tailspin and full blown, tantrum and episode as an adult, right?
Mhm.
So her name is Arizona, by the way. And it's been a journey. And so when I was going through, when sort of I was in the trenches in the very beginning and sort of the deer in the headlight, I'm sure you both
Mhm.
understand that part. Like, wait, what's happening? What's going on? I'm not familiar with this right now. What is
Mhm.
going on? Um, I just felt very, very isolated and very alone and very helpless and hopeless. And all of the, so-called agency and tenacity that I had for my own life just sort of went out the window because I was like, nothing is working. I don't know what to do. Even getting support and resources for her. I mean, nowadays, I feel like a lot of us are talking about neurodivergence and disability, and certainly autism is a household word, right?
Mhm.
ADHD, I mean, that's not so uncommon. um, but back then, I mean, honestly, like, when was that? Like 18 years ago, when she was 2, I did not know another family with someone in the family who with autism, or maybe ADD. I don't know. I never knew of a diagnosis, but we've
Right.
just come such a long way, right? And I wanted to create um, something for parents that was something that I needed so badly when I was younger. And so when Arizona's father and I uh, divorced, made the decision to get a divorce, she was about 7 or 8, and I was like, okay, now I need to focus on building my own career. And I had already been supporting families, just sort of like word of mouth, or just, as you're sitting in the therapy waiting area, right, the waiting room, you're
Mhm.
chatting with other families. You're like, well, do you know about this? And this kind of worked for us, and how about that? And so people started sending um, referrals to me in terms of, hey, Susanna, I have a cousin, her 2-year-old and 3-year-old is not really talking, their eye contact. Do you think you could help? And so I was already, in that role of like, yes, how can I support you?
Mhm.
I'm really interested in doing so. So ultimately, I got, certified as a professional life coach. And I started, building my business in terms of helping families, running connection circles or support circles. Those are all free offerings. Working with families, sometimes on a sliding scale, sometimes, my rate, because I also need to support myself and my daughter, working with corporations and companies, putting together workshops, presentations, and then ultimately becoming a published author. But I feel so fulfilled with my work because it's like my daily life. It's like my life and my work. It's a very, enmeshed, like, sort of integrative. life, integrated life, and I get to create my schedule around my daughter's needs. Um, she lives with me full time, and I know you both sort of listened to a recent podcast that I co-hosted around, forever nester. Like, am I going to be an empty nester? I don't know. I don't know, Um,
Right.
do I think that's a possibility? I think so, maybe, but I don't know, so, people who meet me nowadays are just like, "Oh, hey, what? Oh, you have a 20-year-old. Ugh, you're done." And I was like, "I'm not done." What does that mean? You know what I mean?
This is
So,
fascinating, Susanna, to hear you talk because you and Michelle are almost sort of 10 years apart in your journey, right?
Mhm.
yes.
So what
Yeah.
you're talking about, the lack of resources that were available for you when Arizona was diagnosed, Michelle went through that, I guess, about 12 years earlier, 10, 12 years earlier with
Mhm.
Gregory. That's the whole point of this conversation, this podcast, is for you guys
Yes.
to get to
Yeah. But
help
it's
other parents you sort of get up that learning curve quicker and get connected to those resources. So you wrote a book. Tell us sort of the motivation of the book, the process of the book, and how it's done, and sort of what the overall goals are.
Yeah, so I have 2 published works, now, and I had a dream the other night that I was working on my 4th. So, I don't know what the 3rd is gonna be or the 4th, but just so you know, you heard it here first. Um, the dream, how that one lady had a dream about Twilight and then made the movies, wrote the books and made the
There you
movies?
go.
I
There you
mean,
go.
and
Let's try to
she's
keep the vampires out of it.
right.
Please.
I'm like, can I have a dream like that and make millions, please?"
There you
Exactly.
Um So, no, I've always been a writer. I've never I started writing in a journal when I was 13 years old. I actually have every single journal I've ever written in since the age of 13. I am now 52. So,
Wow.
I'm on my 72nd journal. And to
Wow.
me, it has always been sort of like an instant, therapeutic practice.
Mhm.
Like, just write it out. I mean, obviously, when I was 13, there weren't any computers, no smartphones, nothing like that, not even close. Like, in college, we were kind of starting to dabble in email, but um, nowadays it's crazy if you see someone write, pen to paper, if it's a young person, right? So,
Right.
but either way, I found it to be so therapeutic for me. It was how I was able to express myself, release my feelings, feel heard and seen to myself. And so I love the process of actually writing. And I enjoy words. I was a spelling bee champion in high school. I just love everything about writing and reading and words. And when I was going through a divorce, I started writing more about, deeper feelings and, what would I like to tell my younger self kind of thing. And I started off by writing an article and about, how the unexpected motherhood that I was sort of thrust into, having a different kind of vision, different kind of motherhood than the vision that I had planned for. And then I was like, you know what? I really want to tell my story. I want to share my story. When I was going through this, there wasn't anyone else talking about it that I knew of. There certainly wasn't a guidebook. There wasn't
Mhm.
a roadmap or a blueprint. And I know that we have so many different stories. We come from so many different walks of life as disability parents. However, I just felt like if I can just help, a few people, feel less alone. So I started off writing and just dumping everything into this huge, it was like 350 pages. And then for me, it was actually very necessary because I had to get it all out.
Mhm.
And then once I did that, I started working with a writing coach who was like, okay, so let's talk about, what it's like writing for an audience as opposed to just releasing.
Right.
And that was a process. And I will tell you, it took me 10 years to get this thing published because I would start writing and then I would like be in my office and start listening to like a Coldplay song or something and get so emotional and start crying. And then I would put it away for 6 months.
Yep.
And then, I'd listen to something else and start sobbing, and it just was a very emotional write.
Good.
But it is, it's a memoir of me raising my daughter, Arizona. And and then what I also included at the end of each chapter was sort of like a truth corner, like, okay, here's what I really feel. And then, sort of like hints and tips for every stage of motherhood that I write about in the book. And then as I'm writing, Arizona's getting older and she's like, "You're writing a book about me." And I was like, "Well, it's my story. You're in it, And she was like, "No, thanks." You know what I mean? And I was like, so we had to talk about, because I need to take her, her thoughts and feelings into consideration.
Right.
And so we had to go through that whole process and we came up with a compromise ultimately and eventually, which is she wouldn't allow her name to be in the book. So she's just called the letter A in the book. And the other compromise is that she was going to write the foreword, and by write the forward, I mean she had a conversation with my writing coach who then put those into words, right?
Wow.
And so
That's
one of the
amazing.
things is amazing. And so one of the things that she said basically was like, this is what I want readers to know before they read this story that is about to be told by my mother. And
Wow. That is cool.
one of the things that she said in that forward is, you know, um, yeah, this is it. My daughter A had some advice she wanted to share with readers of this book. Here are a few of her thoughts. And so one of those thoughts was, your true self is enough. You shouldn't have to change yourself to make other people happy. And therefore, the
Aw.
title of my book
Wow.
is
Your
Your
true
True
self.
Self is Enough, Lessons Learned on My Journey Parenting a Child with Autism. And
Wow.
it's it's been well received. It's not a deep, heady read. It's 112 whatever pages of like by the way, I know my audience, like who has time to read 500 pages, right? You're in the midst of caregiving and right.
Mhm.
And then just this, so anyway, so I published that on my 50th birthday. I wanted to have like sort of this
Well, congratulations. That's
milestone.
amazing.
Yeah, it was really, I
Mhm.
feel so proud of myself. And then the second book, I'm in an anthology called Suddenly Brave Together, and it's 30 letters to caregiving moms, basically from those of us who have children 18 years and older, written
Oh,
to that mom who's just received a diagnosis, you know?
Oh, that's brilliant.
no,
Yeah.
that's
And so I'm chapter 23 in that one. But um, yeah, I just, again, any way that I can help support my beloved community that I had no idea I was going to be a part of,
mhm.
I just feel so honored to do
Mhm.
so. I mean, it's like, again, like we come from all different walks of life. Like you're in Texas, right? You're in New York, right? We our kids might have, different diagnosis. I happen to be a single mother. There's a mom who has an amazing, partner who is so involved and they have six other children. Again,
Mhm.
I have two cats, right? So Luna and Fifi. And
Well, I think
and
that's part of I think what
yeah.
we encourage. So the whole family encouraged Michelle to write a book, and and writing a book is intimidating, right? Because like you said, you have to start with everything and then whittle it down. It takes a process, and so we're not known for our patience in this family. So then we moved her into the podcast, right? So here it's a more free form. We can kind of get right to it
Mhm. Yeah.
because she and Gregory have such an amazing story. But there's a lot of context to having a special needs child, and I'm just kind of learning, right? So Michelle's on the front line of this thing, and of course we all love Gregory. But all of our relationship with
Yes.
Gregory is very different, and our responsibilities are nothing compared to what Michelle brought.
Mhm.
But I think that at some point, we often dodge topics because we cry if we get near them, right? But there's a special needs child. There's all the responsibility of being that child's parent, right? But as we all know, like you have a lot of different roles in life, right? So you have the role you have in your business and providing, and you have the role that you have as a spouse, and you have the role that you have as another as parent to another child that's not special needs, or maybe multiple special needs children. So I think that parental role, it would be fascinating to hear you guys talk about what in the social work they talk about as the self-care piece of this thing.
Yeah.
Because we've been super fortunate to be able to support a school of social work, and through our business, and what we learned sort of early stage was that the social workers get involved in such traumatic situations, right?
Yes.
That they learn quickly that if they're not taken care of, then they're not able to care for other people. So that's what I think the way they dumbed it down for me was, like on the airplane, you got to put the mask on yourself first before you start.
Right.
That's right.
So maybe tell me, both of you, think
That's
about
right.
how do you take care of yourself through this whole process? Like, where do you find time? How do you find time? Where do you find time?
You're just so low on the totem pole. I think if it happens, it happens. I'm the worst about that. And I was listening to her podcast today about what if you had to have surgery. I have just had another surgery Friday. I've had 3 surgeries on my foot in the last 3 years, and it is very, very high anxiety about who's going to be here for me.
That's right.
So thank goodness I have 4 siblings and one that lives within driving distance, and she gives up holidays, takes time off to come and take care of me. And we were just talking, the way y'all were talking about what if something major happens, which it does happen in families. Who's going to step in? Who's going to do that? And I'm a widow, so it's just me.
Yeah.
So a lot of it
Right.
falls on my younger son. I have an amazing son that's 2 years younger than Gregory, and he just steps up to the plate. He totally does. He just, Mom, where do I need to be? What do I need to do? But he's local. So
Yeah.
I have a knee
Yes.
replacement coming up in December, and it's on his calendar. I'm like, you can't go hunting. You can't go hunting. I at least need you for the day of surgery, and we'll see how the week goes. And he goes, I'll be here, Mom. So he's got it, wrapped up on his calendar. But it's one of those things where I don't really worry about myself. I worry way more about Gregory than I do myself. I really do. But I think it's normal, don't you?
I mean, 1000%, but it's so interesting because Sean was just talking about self-care also, right? And here we are talking about surgery, right? And surgery, that's a necessity for you. That's a basic human need for you. You have a medical issue and it needs to be fixed with surgery. So imagine we're having this anxiety about surgery. We're having this anxiety about I have anxiety sometimes about even just taking a shower, you know what I mean? And that is also a basic human. That is not self-care, right? So if we're having all of this anxiety and worry, how then do we just leap into, see ya, I'm going to Turks and Caicos or whatever, whatever self-care is for you. I mean, that might not be self-care for someone, but it certainly would for me. I will tell you that.
Well, I got to go on a trip because of my son, my younger son. That's how I got to go.
Yeah, exactly. And aren't we first of all, it takes a couple of days to decompress and even realizing that nobody needs you in that moment. And then you feel guilty sometimes, most of the time. And then you come back kind of like, and also it requires so much effort to plan for every minute of you being gone so that your adult child is taken care of, every single need,
Absolutely.
so self-care for me, I have been able to really lean into just being so present in each moment and asking myself every single day, what does self-care look like for me today? Like, what does like real sort of taking care of my soul look like for me today? How can I find little bits of joy? I just had a delicious Diet Coke right before I got on this podcast. To me, that was I don't drink coffee, but like that's a quick little pick me up. It's fun, and I just knew that I would be in a good mood. Well, I knew I was going to be in a good mood with you two anyway, but just that extra little kick of a Diet Coke. And I have funding for.
But I'm cheating a little bit because I saw a little bit of the podcast, and there was this question of feeling guilty of should I feel guilty that I want to have that I want to maybe want to be an empty nester and maybe I won't be an empty nester? Should I feel guilty that I'm a little bit jealous of someone else's life because they're going to be an empty nester? But I guess I don't really know how to ask the question. But at some point, if you're not selfish, it all blows up. Like I can tell you in a work context, I deal with this fairly frequently, where you have a wonderful contributor that you see working themselves, to a point that they're gonna become exhausted and end up quitting. And I have to sit them down and say, like, we appreciate it, but we need you here for 10 years, not for 10 months. And I've seen this pace. We've done this pace, and we know it's not sustainable. So like, what advice would you have for those young moms to be a little? I mean, is it be a little selfish, because this is a long-term project, right? This isn't something that's going to get better tomorrow, right?
Yeah, they're not going to go off to college at 18, right?
No, not in my case, not in your case, right? Yeah,
right.
So how do you manage that? How do you get yourself in a place to where you're still able to have the fun you should have and have the time for yourself that you need while you have such a huge responsibility?
I don't know.
You don't?
I really can't. I mean, I went
that's the wrong answer. So we should we need another guest for both of you.
I know. I have low blood pressure. Well, and I had high blood pressure going in. They looked at me, and I was worried about, I'm just worried about what's going on. Where is he? I don't know. I can't answer.
That's a lot of responsibility. I get it.
I think that we have to first acknowledge that that it is not guilty to put ourselves first. Let's just talk about that tiny little piece, which is not a tiny piece, it's a big piece. And then to lean into who we are as these long-term caregivers, right? And with caregiver burnout, on repeat. To have so much compassion for ourselves, I think for me has been the key to getting over that little hurdle of not feeling so guilty and not feeling like my joy and happiness does not matter. I feel like it matters so much. I actually still have the ability.
It matters tremendously.
Tremendously.
It matters how effective you're going to be as a caregiver.
Yes, and a human being. And but I have found it to be almost non-negotiable now in my days. And some days I can't access it when there's like there's an emergency happening where I have to be so physically present, right? My daughter's having an accident or issue or something, right? I have to be so present. I have to forego my needs in that moment. And there are ways to just integrate into our own lives. Like, I have to cut out 30 minutes of my time. I cannot take that call from my friend who's so amazing that I know is just going to talk about her neurotypical teenagers the whole time. Whatever it is. I mean, fill in the blank, right? Like, I just made the decision that my family's in Ohio, right? And I have 4 siblings too. And I love my family. Everyone lives so far away. I'm so sad that we don't live closer. And they all have tons of kiddos. And I just made the decision that I cannot go to Ohio for Thanksgiving because my daughter's schedule only allows her to take Thursday and Friday off that week, as opposed to before, when she was in her high school program, she had the entire week off so that we could come on a Tuesday. It's not so crowded. It is not going to be self-care for me to traipse across the country during Thanksgiving week with my daughter, even as much as I want to see my family. So I had to make that decision to say, no, I can't do that. Right. But that is going to be so supportive for me in the long run, because I'm not going to be frazzled and fried. I will see my family in December, and then we can stay for longer. And then it's not going to be, I'm just saying, like, I have to check in with myself at every single turn. Does this work for me? Yes. Does it not work for me? No. And, I've been able to build a little team of helpers. I've been able to get funding for said helpers, right? Absolutely.
In your home?
Yes, Sean. And even out in the community, like community living support. Let's go, I have helpers who will come and take Arizona, and they'll go to the mall and they can talk, they can work on social skills. Anyhow, yes.
No, but this is important. this is where we get into like those little factoids that I find
Mhm.
fascinating, because you guys probably had to find them on your own, and maybe we could provide you guys can provide a shortcut to someone. So maybe just, if you don't mind, like, what's the technical process? Is this different in California than it would be in Texas?
Well, I'll tell you
But
how. Yeah, that's an excellent question, and by the way, it was not an easy feat. It required a lot of tenacity and advocacy and being a squeaky wheel, which, by the way, I
Mhm.
know not everybody feels comfortable doing that, but I was so
Mhm.
desperate for support that
Mhm.
could help me,
Yeah.
that could also be supportive for Arizona. But I was the first one in my train of thought, like, how can I just have a little respite, you know?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so we have regional centers here in California. Arizona has been a client of the West Side Regional Center since she was 2.5, when she was first diagnosed with
Mhm.
autism. There are vendors and support modalities that help her get, the therapy she needs, social skills groups, things like that. A few years ago, I moved into what is called self-determination program, SDP. And so I don't know what other states have SDP,
Wow.
but let's talk about this for a second. So basically, all of the funding that Arizona was able to get through the regional center, because I was having a hard time finding vendors that were perfect for her, because like
Right.
the social skills groups were always like all boys and she wanted to be with girls, you know,
Mhm.
eh,
Mhm.
understandably so.
Right.
And so self-determination allows me to take the dollars that used to fund all of the other services vendored through the regional center, and now I can find my own vendors for community living support. I can find employees, 25 bucks an hour, $30 an hour, whatever it is. There are college students who have siblings on the spectrum who have
Wow.
disabilities, and I will it's like I have that spidey sense. Like, I will meet them out in the wild, and then they have to go through this whole vetting process of working.
right,
There's
Mhm.
one college student who works with us. Her brother in Arizona were on the same special needs soccer league team for years, and she would always come to the matches. And I was like, and once I got this funding, I was like, "Excuse me, hello," and it's like I don't even have to train her. She knows
Right.
right.
so much, her patience, her understanding, like, so she came the other day and I went out to dinner. Hello, you know?
Wow.
Um, I mean, and then when Arizona's in various school programs, then I can, either do my work as I need to do my work, or I will schedule, I'll go run around on a tennis court and whack a
Mhm.
ball, you know?
Nice.
That is
Mhm.
not pickleball, tennis.
Real things.
I'm just saying, finding the things, and then I get to be with all these other ladies who love to play tennis, and my life feels so much different than theirs most of the time, because, you know, I am not a lady who lunches. However, every once in a while I can be a lady who lunches one day, you know?
Mhm.
That's
Um,
it.
so I feel
And what
normal,
was it
Sean.
called? The self determination.
Yeah, SDP,
Self-determination program.
self-determination program. And let's, you
And
know
is that
what? Let's
a national thing, or is that just a California
I
thing?
don't know. I'll have to Google it and find out.
You're putting me on the spot, but let's brainstorm, let's research this together, because it has
Yeah,
been life
definitely.
changing. It has been life changing
Mhm.
for me. Um,
I've never heard of it. That's amazing.
That's amazing. I live in a really small town, and I moved from a fairly larger town, but the support I had were the kids that he went to school with. They'd pick him up, take him to the movie, or take him somewhere, even as a senior, and or through high school. And I really miss that. It was just so good for him. It was just,
right, right.
doing the normal thing. It was
Yes.
a lot of
I
fun, and I could trust
know.
them because they were usually the ones in school that were with him. Not with him, but knew him and were part of the programs at school. So it was kind of cool.
And does that help? Like, if you do want to take a vacation, I've seen these businesses advertised as respite care.
Mhm.
So they're for people with all spectrums of needs. But the whole idea, I love the idea, because the idea is that we'll take care of your loved ones so that you can go and actually get a break and get a
Take a
recovery and
breather.
recharge your batteries. Have you ever looked into those services?
It's kind of yeah, it's kind of like the same thing. I just have multiple staff folks. I mean, if I do go on vacation, well, I will also say my daughter has a father as well, who is in the picture for sure. He's very generous and kind and loving. She just lives with me full time. So I can, schedule sometimes. He's very busy and he travels a lot. So I have to organize and schedule um, for support if I'm out of town for a couple of days. But typically, I have, girlfriends who will take turns that she's known since she was born. You know what I mean? And her food stuff is still a big thing because of all her allergies. So I'm cooking ahead of time and putting together all these little Tupperwares of her meals so that it's easier for the
So building that local network to help you is
yes,
super important.
building
Yeah.
my tribe. Seriously.
Yeah.
And I think,
Because
Tom, that's where it kind of was hard because we moved here when he was a senior. So that tribe I had was in Colorado. And that was the tribe that knew him from, gosh, before he even spoke, right? I
and
mean,
those are like the really big decisions that people make. I mean, so
mhm.
like moving away from that infrastructure is a huge
It's
decision.
just, and that's where you meet, right? You meet your kids, you meet your friends or your kids'
Yes,
parents or your
that's
kids'
right.
friends' parents,
Yeah,
right? That's where
I
you're,
knew
that's
exactly what
where your network is. Yeah.
exactly.
And you feel
Exactly.
comfortable leaving them at their, like Jane, my best friend and I moved away from each other, and it was nothing for us to leave our kids with each other. And Gregory was right in there with them because they knew him since he was, a baby. And when you lose that
But
tribe, I feel like I've isolated. It's because we are kind of out here by ourselves, but we do fine. We do all right.
yeah.
I feel like we can't give people enough, or you guys can't give people enough information, and I think um, I would say sort of permission to go put themselves first more. It
Yes.
feels like it seems like that's the black hole.
Yes.
The black hole you get into.
It is. Well, I know because at our age, Sean, even though you're younger than me, she's way younger than us.
What?
People are retiring. People are retiring now. What are they doing? They're traveling all the time. They just pick up. They just pick up and go, and you're just like, oh. And I do. I pick up and go, but I take Gregory with me. We do travel together. So,
well, I mean, all the work you did, and I think that I always think about the young, like I said, the young parents who just got the diagnosis and they're like, what the heck?
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
Getting that information out to them of like that, hey, you might not be super outgoing. You might not used to be being that sort of tiger mom personality, right? And you might not sort of think about in advance of like of the infrastructure you're going to need when they're 15, 18, 20, 25. So
you do have to get a little mean.
Do what?
You do have to get a little mean, a little aggressive sometimes, don't you, Susanna? You have to be the advocate for them. You really do.
Yeah, and I try to do it with a smile, but I'm not playing around. Like, please, help. Yeah.
Right. But I think also the second part of that is in that long range planning thing, and I know not having had to do this myself, but we just watched the work that Michelle's done to make Gregory as independent as he can be, right? And I think that independence means that I took him on a fishing trip, right? And so all of a sudden, him being with me for 2 or 3 or 4 days was possible because of all of
yes,
work.
Yes,
and
totally.
Like those listing out those life skills that you have to work on every day, like that's a little bit of the goal at the end is everyone gets to have a little bit more of an independent life if all that work is done early on. And in that plan of like what's going to help this person, this special needs person, become as independent as they're not going to reach the same level of independence, but to make sure that they maximize that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's our goals.
That was really beautiful what you said, Sean.
Well, you got
yeah.
And while we were talking, my friend ChatGPT told me that there's a service called appliedselfdirection.com that has gone through and found the names and the details of each state's version.
Hey, now.
There you go. Applied what?
Appliedselfdirection.com seems to be the resource that you would go to, and it will tell you about your state's version of the self-direction program. Which can help
There you go. Okay.
For help for you and your baby.
That's good to
Love
know.
it. Love it.
Yeah, good to know for both of our podcasts.
It's very nice to meet you. I will definitely read your book.
Great.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
And
So
we'll look
good.
forward to it. Now remember, 3 comes before 4. Now you dreamed about book number 4.
I know.
Don't forget number 3.
Okay. Gotta get on it.
Maybe number 3 is about how to take care of the mom. How mom takes care of herself.
Work in progress. But yes, totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
definitely.
Absolutely. So
Thank you
necessary.
so much for reaching out.
Thank you
This was
both.
great.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you for doing the help people.
All right.
Okay. Take care.